Alrighty everyone, welcome back. We are now in the final weeks of October of 2024, and before we get into November, which by the way we know that there's going to be a lot of announcements by the Walt Disney Company regarding the multiple divisions such as Lucasfilm, Marvel Studios, and among others out there like Pixar, but focusing on Disney CEO Bob Iger, we know that he has been in both double down mode and damage control mode for various projects out there. One of the bigger ones, by the way, is the live action remake of Snow White, which by the way is still due for release by late March of 2025 as reshoots inevitably gear up for this December. Now, one thing about all of this is that we know that Iger is really in the hot seat right now. He is failing to place a proper legacy for himself before he plans to step down by 2026, in which he does plan to do so, by the way. There's been a lot of issues going on back and forth between himself, the Disney executives, the board of directors, you name it. And this is where things begin to unravel even further once he engages in damage control mode yet again over the Snow White live-action remake. Now, what's interesting about this is that we already know that Bob Iger, as a CEO, is one that will never admit failure, he will never admit defeat, he will never actually own to the mistakes that he made and the deliberate agendas that he shoehorned into many different projects out there, whether it's Star Wars, Marvel, whatever it may be. Now, what's interesting about this has a lot more to do with Bob Iger and his overall stance against the general public for really going into this boycott, if you will, quote unquote. A lot of families refusing to go ahead and see Snow White, who had an issue with Rachel Zegler, etc., etc., and this is what he had to deliver regarding that. So, of course, with the Walt Disney Company now on the blame game train toward a large percentage of the public for many of their failures in both film and television, one major development going on now involves more to do with Disney CEO Bob Iger and what he had to deliver in regards to the Snow White boycott and the growing backlash over the film. Iger delivered the following. As CEO, I am proud to address our plans for the future of our live-action remakes. One in particular is Snow White, and the concerns that we have dealt with from the criticism toward our direction and the lead actress of Rachel Zegler in our upcoming feature. We here at the Disney Company find it to be deeply offensive to those that are willing to go as far to avoid a film for one reason, and that is our support for diversity, equity, and inclusion. These types of behaviors are not only toxic toward our creatives and talents that star in the film, but also to a large part of our core customer base that is beginning to fall for these false narratives toward the Disney Company that I am willing to protect, as DEI is nothing more than a strategy for us here at the Disney Company to widen our customer base and to also provide everyone around the world the opportunity to become a part of these iconic tales. Miss Zegler is about to star in one of the most iconic roles that picked up its popularity back in 1937, and we are aiming to do a retelling of Snow White that properly addresses and supports DEI. If that is part of one's problem, then I think losing through the view here as CEO, overlooking this project, and this is something bigger than a movie and proves that we have world issues on our hands. The Disney Company is and never will be about forcing any kind of an ideology in both film and or television programs geared toward younger audiences. We have never ever done that, and something like that will never happen under my watch. For a film like Snow White, it was important for us to provide a role for somebody like Miss Zegler that holds a different ethnic background than what we have seen in previous iterations of Snow White to gravitate toward a new customer base. So guys, let me say one thing here, is that Iger lies yet again, saying that they never engaged in any kind of an ideology or any kind of an agenda, quote unquote, toward a younger audience base or a younger audience, percentage of their customer base, if you will. And that is 100% true. They've done this time and time again with multiple features out there. We all saw what they did with The Little Mermaid. We see what they're doing now with Snow White. We see what they have done with Tinkerbell and among other characters that have been established in pop culture for decades upon decades. And it's not just about the Disney live-action characters based on animated classics. It also stretches into things like Marvel, Star Wars, and among other brands out there. So Bob Iger really is just trying to please the shareholders at this point. He is trying to convince shareholders that whatever you're hearing from the public right now is not real, it's false. We heard the same exact nonsense coming from, by the way, Kathleen Kennedy when the Acolyte was failing, that, oh, the Acolyte is not about any kind of an agenda, or it's all about toxic masculinity creating a problem. And that's the ongoing issues, is that they're always on this blame game train. They're always pointing the finger at one group that they claim to be a minority, when in reality it's a majority, let's be honest. The amount of families, believe it or not, boycotting a thing like Snow White, families that have an issue with Rachel Zegler, are actually quite large. You know, more so than you would even believe, honestly. And that's where it really begins to pick up and really gains traction, is that we know that Bob Iger has to double down in damage control mode, because he knows that nothing is really, able to hold itself together at this point. Everything is beginning to fall apart for many of their upcoming live-action remakes, including, by the way, a lot of backlash putting pressure on the Pirates of the Caribbean reboots. There's 2 of them, by the way, in the works as we speak. They will be separate from each other. They won't be considered sequels, so to speak, but that's interesting, and we'll have a lot more to talk about that as well. He goes on to conclude, that is not an agenda, and anyone who claims that to be, I think, simply doesn't understand what an agenda even means. Because we at the Disney company are about evolution in our films and television programs to truly adapt to the modern world and how everything works in 2024 and beyond. One thing I will also address is the criticism toward Ms. Zegler. It comes from a very dark place that holds no validity at all. It is 100% our intention to support DEI in all of our upcoming live-action remakes like Hercules, Sword in the Stone, and much more, that we are preparing to announce in just a short number of months from now. The criticism that we have received for Snow White has not only been unfair, but also unbalanced, and goes in the wrong direction for a fair chance for a product to succeed. So you can see that Bob Iger is truly losing his grip on reality. The fact that he is saying, yeah, we're going to shoehorn DEI into things like Hercules, Sword in the Stone, and among other projects out there, and then seconds later he says, oh, but there's no agenda here at the Disney company. It's insanity, and it's either one of 2 things. He's truly insane, or he believes what he is saying is completely false, and that he doesn't believe in what he's saying, but he has to say it to please the shareholders. Look, he 100% knows what he's doing. He knows that this is an agenda. He will never want to admit that, because it would obviously make shareholders run away and realize that, yeah, Disney's not about entertainment. They're going to just double down on things that are going to fail and lose money. Of course he's going to say things like this. Of course he's going to lie to the general public, to the shareholders, to the customers. And that's what you're always going to see year in and year out. And I don't think that you're going to see a change in that until he steps down and pretty much is no longer the sitting CEO at Disney. That's overall what I think, is that you won't hear more truths coming out of his mouth until a long time has passed that he has retired as CEO. And it would take multiple years. But overall, I would like to hear what you all have to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.